Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So now that we can set an answer as marked, we want to be able to save the marks themselves. So the way check buttons work is, if for example I just try to submit right now without selecting any of this, I will get nothing in the post variable. So let's see what we can do to check the information before we try to save. So I'm in the controllers and mark test controller here, and I come down to if something was posted, because this is where we are. Now I don't want to disturb any of this here. I just want to see what's inside post for now. So I'm just going to say show and put the post variable there like this, and then put die like so. So just show post and die so that we end right there. So if I haven't selected any of these answers here and just say save marks, you will notice that I get nothing there. Okay, so save, nothing. However, if I select one of these, let's start with correct and let's do wrong, and maybe let's try correct again, and let me save. And this time you do see something there. Okay, so what's happening here is these numbers are, if you remember very well, 1 means correct, 2 means not correct. This one is a false answer, this is correct, that's correct. And the question ID are 1, 2, and 4. So if we check here, this is what we've got. We've got question 1, 2, and 4 right here, the first 3. So that's actually correct. But we need to be able to know that this is the correct test we are looking at, because there could be thousands of students and each one of them answering the same question with the same question ID. So we have to make sure that the test is correct using the test ID, and the student is correct that we are marking, and then we add the answer mark right there. So all we are doing is updating, because these records need to already exist for us to put something there. Otherwise, if they don't exist, then we have a problem. We shouldn't even save. So we are looking for this column answer mark, and that's the one that will get these values at the end. So let's see how we can go about that. Now I don't want to delete any of this because it seems relevant. The only thing I want to mute is where I insert, because we don't want to insert anything, any new records here at all. So this part says if not check, then create an insert. So let's just do the opposite by removing the not, so that we can get rid of the else statement here. That way we just go with the update. So we only update if the record exists. That's why we're checking for. If check is correct, then the record exists, then let's update it. But before we do that, let me mute this as well. Let me make sure the information we are adding is good. So to start with, we need to know the user ID, so that's okay. And then here there's a for each loop. In fact, let's start from the top here. So first of all, we need the user ID and test ID, quite all right, so we can know if the record already exists. So here I'm going to check to see answered tests exists. If it doesn't, then we add a new record, though this should not happen because a record should already exist before I even try to mark anything. So instead of creating a new record, we shouldn't be doing that, but it's okay. I can leave this as it is. It doesn't cause any harm. Most of the time, ideally this code will never run, because we'll always have a record of the test that we are marking. Otherwise, how did we get to that record in the first place? So let's see here. Are we using this in any way? DB query. Are we using check to do anything down here? Are we? No, we're creating another check here. So this checking here is completely irrelevant. And the thing is, test ID is being, let's see, user ID and test ID are being created here again. So which means we really don't need this first part right here. So let's just remove it to save space. So all we are doing is going through the post variable and checking if a key is numeric. Now, if you notice here, our keys are indeed numeric. So that's cool. So if the key is numeric, that means it's the correct part that we are on. So the thing I want to know is to get my user ID. So this user ID comes from the URL, right? Yes, right there. So from the URL, and the question ID comes from the current key. So in this case, it's one of these. Okay, so it's looping through each one of these individually, and the first one is 1. So here it's going to be 1. And then we have a date, but we don't really need the date here because all we want to save is really just the mark. So remove the date. And then we need to know the test ID for us to mark the correct test. And then the answer right here is trim value, which is right there. And that value is what we are seeing right here. So yeah, this is correct. So instead of answer, the column we are looking for is, where are the columns here? It's answer mark. So I'm just going to do answer underscore mark there, like so. And then I will check if the answer already exists. So first of all, I need to check if a row exists here. And if it does, I try to update it. So it's not really necessary to check if a row exists before trying to update, because if you just go ahead and update and it doesn't exist, then it will just return nothing. It won't do anything. So maybe it's not important, but it's okay. Now, no harm in trying to check. So first of all, we check for the user ID and the test ID and the question ID. If those things do exist, then we go here and answer ID. Yeah, so the answer ID here is this, the ID of this particular answer, which is this one, the primary key. So that's what I'm getting here of the row that I retrieved. Instead of having to compare the user ID and test ID all the time, I just grab the ID here so I can use that to update. So I know I need to update using the user ID, question ID, date. I don't need any of these guys at all. I just need really the answer mark over here. Oh yeah, so this is why I'm removing these actually from here. Date, we had removed it already, so it won't exist at this point. So I can quickly remove that. So once I unset these three, user ID, question ID, and test ID, so user ID, question ID, and test ID, once I remove this, the only thing that remains is the answer mark. So that's the only thing we're going to be updating here. So let's update that using the whatever ID we have here, and that should work just fine. And then this part makes sure that we redirect to the correct page number. That way the teacher does not get confused as to where the questions went. Okay, cool. This looks pretty good. Yes. The only thing is answer mark. Let me copy that. I don't think that exists in the model. So let's go to our models and let's look at the, I don't know what model we are using here at all. Let's see. It's the answers model. Let me see where we created this so I can know what model. So it's the answers model. So let's go to the answers model and make sure that we duplicate and add answer mark as part of the accepted or allowed columns to be updated. Let's also add comment while we're at it. Answer comments, because that's also part of, or it's actually comment without an S. Okay, cool. That will make sure that that is updated as well when we do have it. Okay, so let's see here. Where am I? I'm lost a little bit here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so this should work actually. So let me come back here, and as you can see, for now there are zeros only, and here this is what we have. There is correct, wrong, correct, and let's refresh the page and see if we can resend this. And boom. Okay, so a few errors here that we get, and that's because we went to the take test instead of mark test. So this is my bad here, because when redirecting, this should go to mark test like this. So if I change that to mark in the URL, okay, then I don't find what I'm looking for, because I also need not only the ID, I also need to concatenate the user ID. So put a dot there, another one, and let's put a slash, 2 quotes, so we can put a slash there, and then concatenate, let's add the user ID, shall we, like so. Okay, so that should solve the problem. So let's get back a little bit. Okay, so document expired. Let's refresh it. Let's try again. Correct, wrong, correct. Oh, by the way, I'm sure it has worked. You see the zeros here. If I refresh, it should have some actual numbers, and as you can see, there are actual numbers 1 to 1. But let's retry again just to see if the redirecting is working. Okay, so the redirecting is working this time, and we actually have some marks here, which is awesome. Now what we need to do is read those marks and put them here to make sure that they reflect on these babies right here. So let's do that in the next video.